you, and I can also that you're not. Then wine, I am Carly.
Okay, lots of yapping to be done today, covering all. End up hitting the target, which might be a bit frustrating, but it still is an otherwise amazing option for the Colossal Swords. Might not be as good as things like Lion's Claw and whatnot, but the projectile can make it very easy to use. Number 32, Endure. Paired alongside the Arrow Reach Talisman for it to go even further. It works with the Smithing Talisman too to make it do more damage. And it only, I think the damage charge it that would otherwise just, that actually does him is actually at once because you can have the Phantom. This skill is actually Stomp in that it is like a cold-based AoE, and cold-based skills do scale off both dexterity and intelligence. Now with an intelligence-based build, I wouldn't really care for it much because with your sorceries, you already have access to like AoEs and frost-based skills, but with a dexterity build, it can actually be very good because you don't really have access to both of these things. So with Divine Beast Frost Stomp, with how easy it is to use, the fact that it can be fully charged, it's good frost build-up, when paired alongside the stomping-based buffs, can actually output some nice amounts of damage, and I think best of all yet, you can pair it with basically every single weapon type in the entire game. It's probably not going to be like the best option if you have the ability to use things like Ice Spear. That just might be the better frost-based skill, and there are probably other different skills in the game that can just output more damage, but just having a nice AoE option that's as easy to use as this one, you can't really go wrong. Number 28, Spinning. Nice AoE option that's as easy to use as this one, you can't really go wrong. Number 28, Spinning Slash. Now there are 3 different variants of this That's 50. We make it do bonus damage as like a bit too slow. The stance damage really. Now this is a much more damage to this enemy. So if you were to use some smaller beast frost dump, which is than Thunderbolt, but if you did Frost Stomp, which is a cold-based skill that you can get relatively early on in the game, it does serve as a or Frost Stomp, which is a cold-based skill that you can get relatively early on in the game. It does serve as a nice AoE, does some decent damage, can proc Frost pretty quickly, but yeah, it's very easy to use, it's cheap, it can't really go too wrong. I think like the worst parts about it is going to be its total damage. It's not going to get too high, and it's going to be outclassed by Divine Beast Frost Stomp, which is in the DLC. This is just like a much better version. Basically the exact same attack, but it just can be fully charged to do more damage, and actually does do at least some stance damage, because regular Whole Frost Stomp literally does 0 stance damage. 66, basically the exact same attack, but it just can be really good. There's lots of good stuff. Sometimes it might have a bunch of health. Different bosses is a weapon buff, and you can just get a bunch more blade-based weapon. That's good. And with Blade Infusions, you don't really get that. Or Power Stancing, you could just have one of the weapons with Seppuku, because at the very least, when you use it upon yourself, it does proc Bleed on you. And with that instance, you actually can pair it alongside a lot of Blood Excitation and the White Mask and actually help proc those buffs. But yeah, the best pairing for a skill like this would be with like a Scavenger's Curve Sword or a Cross Laginata, as they do get passive bleed and are best paired with those Occult Infusions. Number 43, we have Chilling Mist. Now, this skill is not meant to be a primary option by any means, because all it does serve is as a weapon buff. And if you were to make your weapon cold infused or require a different build, you're expecting to intelligence, you're going to have access to frost anyway. But the whole purpose of this skill, in my opinion, is to just be slapped onto a dagger and paired alongside any build that doesn't already have access to frost. So it's like a strength-based build, faith build, arcane build. You just benefit of using Chilling Mist, because you can just lead off the boss fight with this Ash of War slapped onto a dagger, and then you actually end up debuffing them, make them take 10% damage, and make them take 20% more damage over the next 20 seconds. Now, if you actually were going to go with a fire-based build, I wouldn't bother with Chilling Mist, because obviously the fire is going to reset the frost, and we don't want that. But So we're continuing on with Blood Fiend's Arm is probably the best weapon to come out of the DLC, and when paired alongside a Bleed Infusion, it probably is the best bleed weapon as well. Now the weapon actually doesn't get any passive bleed, but it does come with an arcane scaling, so when going into a Bleed Infusion, it kind of The Colossal weapons are obviously going to be really good guard countering options, as they cannot only So I did just complete a weapons tier list covering all 400 weapons in the game. Now yes, I did do this on stream, so I'm not going to include any gameplay or have any numbers to back up what I'm saying in this video. If you did want to see something like that, I have a whole dedicated playlist that you guys can go check out. It spans for over 10 hours in length, but I did decide to do this for like fun on stream and to just have like all my opinions just like in one neat little video. And with Night Rain coming around the corner, I don't really see myself talking much about these weapons again. And it is like still somewhat relevant because all the weapons in this game are pretty much going to be in Night Rain too. But as always, keep in mind, this is just going to be for PvE. Anyway, enjoy the video. We're just going to start off with the daggers. Okay, now the daggers, I see them to be as like more second environments. Blood Fiend's Arm, broken tier. This is probably a top 3 weapon in the game. I'd say number 2, honestly. Definitely the best weapon to come out of the DLC, for many reasons. One is going to be its charged heavy attack. It gets the fastest charged heavy attack out of all the colossal weapons, and funnily enough, it gets like a faster charged heavy attack than like some great swords too. Like it's like that's how fast the charged heavy attack is. And not only is it faster, but it also gets the most stance damage. Like these things get like 45 stance damage on a charged heavy attack, which is like more than anything else in the game, and it does it the fastest. And specifically for the Blood Fiend's Arm, it gets this like bleed AoE aftershock wave effect that gets a bit more stance damage, so it could do like even more than that. It's just ridiculous. But what also makes it broken is that when you pair this thing alongside a bleed based build, that bleed shockwave effect that I talked about also can proc status effects. So you can use things like, when you're with a bleed based build, you're getting like well over like 200 to 300 bleeds build up. And the fact that the weapon already comes with an arcane scaling, with a bleed based infusion, it doubles down into that arcane scaling, giving you so much bleed. And it performs really well with a faith based build too. Because with a faith infusion, going into the arcane stats, boosts not only the physical damage, but the fire damage, I believe. Actually, no, the faith stat works that way. My bad. Yeah, it's broken. It does like ridiculous damage with a faith build, arcane build, best charged heavy attack. It's probably the best charged heavy attack weapon, best faith weapon, best bleed weapon, and the best guard countering weapon. Which is another thing. The colossal weapons get really good guard counters too, because they're really good at blocking, and they're actually pretty quick for how fast they are. The Great Club. Now the Great Club, if it could be infused, it'd pretty much be the Blood Fiend's Arm, because it gets the exact same heavy attack. And the heavy attack, as I mentioned,
this video will cover
that doubles down into that arcane scaling. Tweeter's getting like monstrous amounts of bleed build up. Bleed infusion, it kind of doubles gets any passive bleed, but it does come with an arcane scaling. So when going into a bleed infusion, it kind of doubles down specking into the arcane stat, because most of the time when you're going with a bleed infusion, you don't really get that good of an arcane scaling, but with this weapon you do. And on top of that, it just gets the best charged heavy attack in the game, as it does share the exact same animation as the Greats Club, which is the fastest charged heavy attack out of all the colossal weapons and colossal swords by far. And the Blood Fiend's arm also gets a unique AoE explosion upon the heavy attack that hits like arcane stat. Tweeters with an arcane scale is the best thing, so it's a bleed into a bleed. You don't really get in the game. Colossal weapons and colossal swords by far. And the Blood Fiend's arm also gets a unique AoE explosion upon the heavy attack that hits like multiple times, and this actually does scale with the bleed and just do more stance damage. So you're going to be doing roughly like 48 stance damage per hit, which is by far the most in the game in terms of a charged heavy attack, but you can also be doing like upwards of 300 bleed build up too, which is just ridiculous. So the optimal way to build around it is going to be with a charged heavy attack build, and also with guard countering, because this also gets the highest poise damage when guard countering, and being that it's a colossal weapon, it's actually going to be pretty decent at blocking as well. So obviously we're going to have the axe talisman and the two-handed talisman for just more damage, more charge attack damage, the blade of mercy because we are going to be stance breaking a lot, and obviously things like Lord of Blood exaltation and the white's mask for just more damage when you do proc bleed on a nearby enemy. And we are going to have the weapon infused with Crag Blade too, which is just 15% more damage and just 10% even more stance damage on top of that, and it lasts a minute. And obviously for our crystal tier slots, we're going to go with the deflecting tier and the spikes tier, which the spikes tier is 15% more damage to our charged heavy attacks, and the deflecting tier gives us the ability to just not take much stamina damage or any damage at all to our charged heavy attacks, and the deflecting tier gives us the ability to just not take much stamina damage or any damage at all when blocking at the correct time, and it just buffs our guard counters by up to 80% more damage and 50% more stance damage. So if you're going to be fighting bosses where they don't really give you an opening for a charged heavy attack, more likely than not, they're going to be very easily countered by this deflecting build. And being that we are spec'd into some arcane, we're obviously going to have the Dragon Communion Seal, and I'm just going to be using Dragon Ice as like our main projectile option, and I do have Fire Serpent as like a really quick projectile option that's pretty cheap, and obviously Gold of our Ash War slapped onto a dagger, and Flame Grant Me Strength too. The Mariah's Executioner Sword can be an absolute high damaging machine with its weapon skill, and they just result in the highest amount of damage, and they're actually on the quicker end as well. Like these guard counters can be quicker than things like curved greatswords, which is honestly insane for how much damage and stance damage they can do. Now they are going to have a bit slower recovery animations, so you still might end up getting hit afterwards, but you're still going to win that trade anyway. And for things like the Giant Crusher, it can just make for this really stupid amounts of guard counter builds, as this one is just the best blocking weapon in the entire game. Like this thing can just block better than most shields in the game, it's that good. And it can just output just stupid amounts of damage with a guard counter, and do 45 stance damage too. Now I'm not going to go with this one being the best for colossal weapons, because there actually are that do get some more stance damage. The Troll's Hammer, the Anvil Hammer, Gazing Finger, and the Blood Fiend's Arm all get 50 stance damage with their guard counter attacks. And obviously the Blood Fiend's Arm is the only one there that can be infused, so that's going to be my pick for the best colossal weapon for guard countering, and the second best guard countering weapon in the game. You're gonna slap Cragblade onto this thing, put it alongside a Bleed Infusion, and whenever you don't have an opening for a charged heavy attack, just go ahead and deflect and get yourself a guard counter and do over 60 stance damage with that Crag Blade and that deflect tier active. Yeah, this weapon is just one of the best in the entire game for a lot of different reasons, and its guard counter potential is just one of them. The best deflecting and guard counter weapon in the game. You're gonna slap Crag Blade onto this thing, put it alongside a Bleed Infusion, and whenever you don't have an opening for a charged heavy attack, just go ahead and deflect and get yourself a guard counter and do over 60 stance damage with that Crag Blade and that deflect tier active.
Wait, well, you're back. Goodbye. Wait, well, you're back.
bleed infusion.
Bloodfiend's arm is one of the most powerful weapons in Shadow of the Erdtree. So in this week's search for the best weapon in Elden Ring, and that's it. A tie for first place on
This is a colossal weapon. And feed
Hey guys, this is it. Now let's enjoy the
how you can get this incredible Bloodfiend's Arm bleed build going. Fiend Arm is a go for the occult affinity, or if you want very high physical damage plus blood loss buildup, go activate, or if you want very high physical damage and stats, or an alternative talisman, which increases damage of all attacks and guard counters performed when two. If you're already high leveled and are put
It kind of doubles down into that.
you're back.